Y'all see what that should say? Torture enemy slave shoes. Says Spice. I'm just looking. I'm like, I was just rocking these, and I'm like, hold up. That's weird.
And ain't that I feel like a slave? We are mentally enslaved. We enslaved to brands. We enslaved to like a bin symbol. We enslaved to chains. A woman is enslaved to the concept of diamonds are a girl's best friend. Like girls in London don't even wear engagement ring. That's all been programmed into us. When we born artists. We born free, and then we held down by society's perception of us. We just don't want to be embarrassed. They would like us to think that we are free, but we completely controlled. We're controlled by a Nike sign. We're controlled by peer pressure. We're controlled by the longing for a particular car that's set at a high price.
I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, which is the name of the Heavenly Father. Yah means He, Hawa means exist. In the name of His Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, whose name is Yahweh in the Paleo Hebrew. Yah means He, Hawashai means delivers. In the name of the Holy Spirit, in the which in the Paleo Hebrew is Rakah Quadash. Quadash is holy, Rakah spirit. Okay, so without any further ado, we have seen those two videos. Okay, one was of the shoes, in which you see the shoes. The dude was like, "Oh, snaps! I was just wearing those," but they showed those slippers, and it said those were tortured slave shoes, in which people rocking those today. Then we had the short clip of Kanye West kind of going into how the people over us, the powers that be, push all of these ideas on us, okay, that keep us in a slave mentality. But really, I wanted to do this video just adding on to the video I did entitled Burst Thy Bonds, which is just paraphrasing Jeremiah the 30th chapter, verse 8. And I was sort of going in on how the birth certificate not only makes a person a citizen, but that document binds the people to the corporation of America, and then it creates a fictitious business. It creates a fictitious business that ties you to that corporation, because just how we seen in that video that when you're born free. But how do they capture you? They capture you through these instruments, and we're talking about legal documents that bind you to the corporation. And they push they always have advertisement or some sort of a campaign behind these documents that they like to push to keep our people bound. So I just want to and how you tell the difference between your free person and your fictitious business name is whenever you receive mail, you see your name in all capital letters. That's them addressing your fictitious business name, okay? Now I just want to take a look at some of these instruments, because we're talking about legal documents that keep our people in this state, being on a perpetual hamster wheel, seems like. But I also want to get into James the 5th chapter, because how I was going in on Burst Thy Bonds, that video, regarding the money, and how the money is just a fiat currency, and how the only thing that's keeping it going is the energy that people put into it and the usage of it, instead of trying to formulate some new means of trade, like the barter system. But let's hit James the 5th chapter. All right, so this is James chapter 5, verse 1. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rest of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you, kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Okay? So what is it saying? It's saying their gold and silver is cankered. Now, just how I was speaking in the last video, that the dollar is not backed by any gold and silver, but you still have these industries like Cash for Gold that's trying to get all of the resources stockpiled up for themselves, because they're in cahoots with, or they are another instrument. And when we talking about instrument, we talking about legal documents. So what's a legal document? When you create a business, that's a form of of some sort of instrumentation or a legal document. But that uh the business or corporation, whatever it falls under, is tied directly to the powers that be. So while you're paying uh so they can get control of these certain resources, and then once they get control of of most of the resources, then they have control over the price of it or what it is worth. Okay, so let's go to Genesis, the 49th chapter, but let's go to the blue letter. Gen 49. Genesis 49, blue letter. Bear with me. All right, we gonna start. Let's start at the 5th chapter. This is Genesis 49 chapter, Genesis chapter 49 verse 5. Excuse me. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly mine honor. Be not thou united, for in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So when we talking about Simeon and Levi, you know, according to the 12 tribes chart, Simeon and Levi are the Haitians and the Dominicans. And if you actually look at a map of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, they lie on the same island. And when we talking about Haiti, the history of Haiti was they were one of the first so-called Negro peoples to get their freedom from the so-called European powers that existed. You know, the white man, okay? And that's why they stay in an oppressed state till this day. Now, when we actually breaking down this verse, Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments of cruelty are in their habitation. That's also going back to when their sister was raped, and then they went and slew all of the inhabitants of the city plus some, and they started a big kind of, not a civil war, but it started some mess jumped off, you know, just to keep it short. But now I'm talking about these instruments. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. So we talking about legally binding documents, okay, articles that keep these people downtrodden, that keep them in a perpetual state of servitude. Instruments of cruelty. Let's go to this word, instruments. Simeon and Levi are brethren, instruments. This is the Hebrews 36:15. Let's see this word for the translation.
Strong's H3627. Kelly.
Okay, so let's get a little information on there. Something prepared. Strong's definition: something prepared, any apparatus as an implement, utensils, dress, vessel, or weapon. Okay, now even that kind of reminds me of, I'm not sure if it was Oliver North or whatever happened, but uh how the government was they got caught dropping a lot of firearms and artillery within Jake neighborhoods. Okay, we talking about Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, especially the so-called black community. How did all of these guns get inside the community? Because of these so-called instruments, these backdoor deals. Particularly is just a plan to destroy the so-called black man, destroy the so-called Native American, destroy the so-called Latino. Why? Because they are all descendants of Jacob. So when we talking about these people, which is headed over by the nation of Edom right now, we talking about the people that have the so-called powers that be, who are in cahoots with these other nations. They try to devise schemes to try to keep us perpetually downtrodden, in which is going to work for a while, but it's not going to stay like that. Sorry to rant, but let's go down some more. Implement of hunting or war, implement of music, implement tool, equipment, yoke of oxen, utensils, furnitures, vessels, receptacles, general vessels. Now masculine, articles. Okay, so let's harp on this word articles. Okay, let's get the word articles, because what I'm thinking of is articles of incorporation when I'm hearing articles. Let's look up this word articles, because that was one of the definitions for that translation of instrument. Articles of, you have your articles of confederation, articles of incorporation. Let's just look up articles as a legal definition. Particular item or object, a piece of writing included with others in a newspaper, magazine, or other publications. Okay, so now let's look up articles as a legal definition, because all these people operate is in their legality and their legalese. So even when you're hearing certain words that just might sound normal, there's a certain underlying definition to it. So let's look up the legal definition of an article. An article is a legal rule that can be set out under a statute, a code, or a paragraph in a legal document. Articles usually refer to matters that have been agreed upon by the supervising authority. For example, in contracts, an article under the UCC can set out a list of contractual obligations between parties. Okay, so what does so when speaking on terms of this the birth certificate, now we know, is there some type of writing on there that legally binds you? Well, we know that birth certificate legally binds you to the laws and bylaws of the Corporation of America. But deceitfully, okay? And I'm going to actually play another little video in a minute, but I want to get through some of this. So let's look up articles. We've looked up articles. Let's go back to Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah 32. Let's go back to let's hit the blue letter. So we still harping on this word instruments. One of the definitions for that word instruments was articles, which popped in my mind, articles of incorporation. Because we talking about slavery under this corporation of America. And the bursting of the bonds which the Lord hath proposed for the residue of his people. But let's bear with me. Let's get Isaiah. Let's start at verse 5. The vile person shall be no more called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. For the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, and to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. The instruments also of the churl are evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaketh right. So when we considering Levi and Simeon, okay, not only are they in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, but we have a lot of Levites that live in the States. We have a lot of Simeonites that live in the States. You know, and a lot of them live in these downtrodden neighborhoods called the ghetto, whatever the case be, in which all of these evil devices are still, all of these laws and bylaws have been created to keep us in a perpetual state of servitude. Okay, the guns placed in the neighborhood, the drugs placed in the neighborhoods. Okay, we have the abortion centers placed in the neighborhoods, and all of these are done through policies that have been put forth. So let's get this one again. The instrument also, this Isaiah chapter 32, verse 7, the instruments also of the churl are evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaketh right. But the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things shall he stand. Okay, and what's part of that liberation? Okay, we have, just like I stated, these abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood, you know, this whole LGBTQ thing that's being pushed upon everybody. These are all liberal devices, but the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things he shall stand. Okay, let's get back to Genesis, the 49th chapter. Okay, we done harped on Simeon and Levi. Now let's go into not Judah. Let's go to Issachar. So this Genesis chapter 49, verse 14. Issachar is a strong ass couching down between two burdens. And he saw the rest was good, and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. Now, who is Issachar? Issachar is the so-called Mexicans, okay? or that's what they call themselves. But even before they were called Mexicans, we talking about they were going by Aztecs, Mayans, Incas, whatever the case be. But where did they dwell in? They dwelt in parts of America. They dwelt in what is now called the landmass of Mexico, and they dwelt in the northern tip of South America. So that they were crouching down between two burdens. So we would say that a lot of their inheritance over here in the Americas was more so in Central America, and they went up to North America and South America. Okay, where was I? Issachar is a strong ass couching down between two burdens, and he saw that the rest was good, and the land that it was pleasant. So when the 10 northern tribes came up out of their Assyrian captivity, they came over here to the land of Ophir, which was over here in the Americas. And Solomon, before, when the kingdom of Israel was still together, they used to go out, King Solomon, along with the king of Tyre named King Hiram. They came over here. They did expeditions over here to the Americas, and where they, you know, I'm not gonna say spoil, but they took a lot of, they gathered a lot of goods and resources and brought them back to King Solomon, and that was the land was rich in gold, and that's how one of the reasons why Solomon became rich, because of Ophir, which was over here in the Americas. But moving on, and he saw that the rest was good, and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. So if anyone's ever seen that movie, that Mel Gibson, I believe he produced it or directed it, something like that, but it was called Apocalypto, and you were seeing like the natives over here, and the so-called natives over here in the Americas, because really they stem from the 10 tribes of Israel. And a lot of people like to say that they're the 10 lost tribes. No, the people over here in the Americas, in the Caribbeans, they were the lost tribes of Israel. They're not lost. They just came over here to the Americas, and you could read that in Second Esdras, the 13th chapter, right around the 41st verse going down, something like that. But to continue, and he saw the rest was good, and that the land it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. Okay, and going back into that movie Apocalypto, it kind of goes into how the conquistadors came into the Americas. And we know when the so-called conquistadors came into Mexico and South America, uh what followed after: a lot of rape, robbery, murder. What were they looking for? They were also looking for the city of gold, which they called El Dorado. Okay, which also proves the point that this land was Ophir, the land of Ophir, the place rich with gold. And it also kind of highlights, or you can get the message about when so-called Christopher Columbus came over here to the Americas. And then you had that Spanish Inquisition, I believe, which was a little earlier or later. I'm not sure about the exact historical timeline or chronology, but with those Europeans coming over here, they were looking for the 10 tribes, okay? And we talking about going back to Genesis 49 verse 15, and he saw the rest was good. So when they inherited the land, it was good. And then they planted, they built cities, but they start going into wickedness, right? And bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute, because at the time of the when Christopher Columbus and the Spanish Inquisition came in, then they started implementing slavery unto the people, and it wasn't always by force, but they got tricked, by through sharecropping and everything, by contracts, false treaties, the same tactics and techniques that are used on us today, basically. But I want to get to a video that sort of explains it. Let's bear with me. Watch later. Okay. Let's just go to the library. All right, so this is a video entitled "Peonage Was Still Slavery in America." And this is how Issachar bared down and became bared the burden and became a servant unto tribute.
How peonage kept blacks enslaved in America. Slavery was incredibly profitable. It supported America's economy in its infancy and after its abolishment by the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The effects of all the laws and systems that were adopted in place of slavery continued to deny black descendants of American chattel slavery the citizenship rights granted to them by the 14th Amendment. The Southern states adopted black codes or grandfather clauses, and access to civil, political, and social rights was not much better in the North, where segregation remained the norm. After Congress ratified the 14th Amendment to grant civil rights to black Americans, the Supreme Court narrowly interpreted the 14th Amendment to guarantee only federal enforcement of the privileges and immunities of citizenship. However, states were left free to determine the citizenship status of their residents individually. The Supreme Court further restricted the power of the 14th Amendment in the 1883 civil rights cases by ruling that the 14th Amendment barred only discrimination in state action, but that private racial discrimination was an unprotected social matter. In effect, the U.S. government was sanctioning divisions between civil, political, and social rights when the citizens affected were black Americans. With the U.S. government refusing to meaningfully enforce the constitutional grant of civil rights to black Americans, it was hard to be genuinely free from enslavement. So many black American agricultural workers returned to virtual slavery in a system known as peonage. Now, peonage, also called debt slavery, is a system where an employer compels a worker to pay off a debt with work. Legally, Congress outlawed peonage in 1867 with the 13th Amendment, along with slavery. But without the U.S. government enforcing the constitutional amendments, black farm workers returned to work at the plantations that had previously enslaved them and agreed to work for money that was often printed by the plantation owners themselves and usable only at the plantation owner's store.
So this is not only referring to what they call African Americans, but this happened to the so-called Native Americans also, in which the tribe of Issachar would be some of those Native Americans, okay?
These black farm workers became indebted through unfair sharecropping arrangements. They often lived in shacks on the plantation. Plantation owners would deduct rent for these shacks from owed wages at rates that also kept the black workers indebted. Sham accounting practices were common, and some plantation owners even entered into contracts with black farm workers with no intent to ever pay them. There were also local and state governments that contributed to keeping abusive peonage alive by picking up black men for minor crimes or on trumped-up charges. The men would then be assessed excessive fines and court fees, and then forced to work for a local employer who would pay their fines for them. Southern states also leased their convicts en masse to local industrialists, but then conveniently lost records of the debt, trapping some convicts in leases that never ended. The peonage system endured well into the 1940s thanks to state statutes that protected it, and many black Americans found themselves in a continuous work without pay cycle. They were still building wealth in America.
Especially when you talking about this work without pay, and if you understand that the money has no real resource for intrinsic value to it, you're truly working without pay. And the only the only upside to it is that you can purchase resources with money, but the resources are also the value of the resources is all fluctuate because it's controlled.
For others, not themselves. Video courtesy of the freemaninitiative.org. Donate to freemaninitiative.org today.
Okay, so everything is manipulated, okay? Prices always are manipulated, and the people are manipulated into keep working for something that has no value to it. Just like how the video was stating that they find themselves working just to get out of debt. And what is this? What is the dollar? The dollar is a debt note, because America is what trillions of dollars in debt. What does it say in Habakkuk? Woe to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. And that word for clay, I believe, is ibatya or something like that. I'm not gonna go into it, but that is going into debt, and that's how their silver and gold is corrupted, because they're hoarding all of the silver and gold for themselves, and then they're paying people with this money that's worth nothing. And just how we seen in one of the first video, the video that had Kanye West in it, he said these people, let's play it. I'm not gonna play it again, but basically he was saying these people really have control over your mind, talking about these corporations, and he named a few like Nike and Mercedes Benz, and okay, but all of these are in cahoots and giving power under, their articles of corporation. They are underneath their masters, who are the powers that be. Okay, when we talking about the Luciferian agenda, the Illuminati, so is America as a corporation. It's under that system, or it's under those people. So I wanted to get a couple more precepts. Let's go back to let's get Isaiah. Let's get Isaiah 42. And he was talking about jail and bail bonds and everything. Well, guess what? And talking about peonage, debt slavery. So this is Isaiah chapter 42, verse 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore. So that is one of these articles, because we talking about the prison industrial complex, and we talking about legal instruments. So let's look up instruments again in a legal sense. A legal instrument. Because I'm not sure how much these prisoners get paid when they go to work, but it's not much. Okay, pennies on the dollar. So that's a institution of slavery right there. Legal instrument definition. What is a legal instrument? Legal instrument is a legal term of art that is used for any formally executed written document that can be formally attributed to its author, records, and formally expresses a legally enforceable act, process, or contractual duty, obligation, or right, and therefore evidences that act, process, or agreement. Legal instrument. Legal instrument is a legal term of art that is used for any formally executed written. Legal instrument, okay, keeps giving me the same. I want to I want a definition that's worded differently. It keeps giving me the same thing. Legal instrument means any legislative and statutory provision, act of administration. So when we going in on the prison industrial complex and privately owned prisons, okay, then we talking about the rap music, which was invented to fill up these private prisons. And then we talking about the stock market. All of these are in cahoots to keep the children of Jacob, the seed of Jacob, to try to keep the seed line of Jacob in a perpetual state of servitude underneath them. Because it is said that the saints shall take the kingdom, and that's what the so-called white man fears the most. That day when the saints take the kingdom. So he has to devise these instruments, okay, against you. But he's only living in the blessing. He's only living in the blessing that his father Isaac had given him, because remember the two blessings in Genesis, the 27th chapter. Okay, he shall rule with his sword, and his policy is part of his sword, because after his policy comes the sword. If you don't agree with it. So let's go to Daniel. I had it written down. Bear with me. Oh yeah, Daniel 8:25. It's Daniel 8:25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And just like how it says, by peace he shall destroy many, and that's going through the devising of these laws, just like it says in I believe that's the 64th chapter of Psalms. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked. Why? Because they devise these laws and then they say, oh, this is good for you, this is peaceful. Just like one example is these abortion laws. Okay, how you have and it's not by a coincidence or by any chance that a lot of these abortion clinics are in the hoods and the ghettos, and where the downtrodden people be, so-called Black, Latino, Native American places where they stay, especially in a so-called Black neighborhood. Okay, why? Because that was an instrument. We talking about legal documents put them in that place. to what? Destroy many by craft. And guess what? They told you that, oh yeah, that's a good thing. We giving you health care. You got family planning. You got birth control. Okay, that the Lord told us to be fruitful and multiply. Okay. Then they set out the part of medical their medical arm, their medical instrument. We talking about the articles of corporation, okay, which their medical field will fall under one of their instruments, okay. Push out these medicines, and they push out also these diseases. And basically put a way of life on you and an idea that goes against the ways of life, in which we talking about the law, statutes, and commandments, and when you follow them, you have gives you long life. So I kind of went through. I just want to hit up Genesis the 49th chapter one time. Kind of finish out in that. Genesis 49, KJV. I was in a blue letter, but we'll still finish it off. I wanted to get it where it's talking about Gad. Bear with me. Okay, verse 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Okay, and who was Gad? Gad was the so-called Seminole Indians. Gad is the Seminole Indians. And who was Reuben? Reuben was the like the Cherokee Indians, okay? So when we talking about Native Americans, Gad and Reuben were also dwelling over here in the Americas. We talking about North America. Guess what? It said they shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. A troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Why? Because they were fell subject to these instruments also. But just how, like I said in the beginning, I was just going back in on Jeremiah the 30th chapter. We're gonna get this and close out. Verse 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him. So the breaking of this bondage is also going to be the breaking of these instruments that keep us in this sort of slavery, all right, in this bondage, in this captivity. And the Lord is going to free the remnant of his people. So with that being said, Kawalao Yahaba Shim Yahweh Shai Ba Shema Kakadash Barakatah.